Okay, so um, awesome. So we have 5 people who are viewing us. Hi, Mansi, Achal, Sumit. Okay. Um, so today's conversation is on alternatives in transportation, and we have Shweta with us. Shweta from Parisar. So I'll quickly introduce Shweta, and then maybe Shweta, you can talk about Parisar and the work that Parisar has been doing. So Shweta has been engaged in activities that are promoting awareness in various groups about the role of cycling and sustainable urban transport in the city. And she has forayed into different transportation issues such as gender and transport, the economic aspects of transportation in a city, the grading of bus transportation service in Pune, air quality and its relation with transport. And her some of her interests include public policy analysis and advocacy, and focusing on non-motorized transport in cities. That was a very long description, but yeah. Maybe Shweta, you can talk about Parisar and the work that Parisar has been doing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Urvi, for that introduction. So I'll start with what Parisar is and what has it been doing. So Parisar is an organization which is as old as I am, so it's pretty old. It's been here since 1987, and the idea behind forming Parisar was a very broad, a very holistic one, which sort of, I mean, the founders were all people of Pune who felt dearly about Pune and who really felt that, Pune's character of of the city is changing. And it's changing in a way which is very difficult to document on a day-to-day basis. But when it comes to a long length, what we are losing is parts of the city, parts of the essence of the city. And that's why these people felt that somebody has to really be looking at what changes are being done in the city. How is it affecting the natural and built heritage of the city? How is it affecting the quality of life of the people actually living in the city? And with that intent, with the understanding that, we have to somehow find that balance between our needs and what the city is naturally, was sort of the, intent behind founding Parisar. From this broad kind of a sense, it has now actually over the years been focused more on sustainable urban transport, but in the ambit of the broader issue of sustainable urban development. So, how our cities are actually being planned is something that we are always interested in, and it is something that really directs how the city is growing, what kind of a life people are living, what is the quality of life, is our city livable. All these questions are what really drive our work. So our focus areas over the years, as I said, has been sustainable urban transport. We are working on road safety issues. It's also related to street design inadvertently, as well as land use planning and air pollution. So these are the broad, focus areas that we have under the umbrella of sustainable urban development. Yeah, so that's just the summary of what we've been doing. Yeah.
That is brilliant, and I'm very excited to dive deeper into the kind of work and the kind of projects that are being taken up. I'll just quickly introduce Vikalp Sangam for the audience who might not know. So Vikalp Sangam is Hindi for Alternatives Confluence. Um, It is an evolving process that involves over 80 movements, networks, and organizations within India. And the process started in 2014, which sort of emerged out of a search for alternatives to the current model of development, which is built on ecological destruction and different kinds of inequalities that we see around. Um, and if any of you want to check out Parisar or Vikalp Sangam, you can go to their Instagram handles and click on the link in the bios, or you can Google them. So the format of the live, I think I have a few questions with me, so we'll get into those, and then towards the end, maybe we can take a few questions from the audience if they have any of those, and I'll keep them noted and present them in the end. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So to begin with, in the light of World Environment Day and World Bicycle Day that was last week, what are your thoughts on switching to bicycles and active modes of transport than using motorized vehicles? And the second part could be, what is the Pune cycle plan that we've been hearing about, and what is its status?
Yeah. So yeah, last week was quite busy for us because these 2 days just come, with a day in between, and we always try to, leverage these days to get some spotlight on, the environment and bicycles. And these are things which are, now more and more people are speaking about it in the light of climate change and all of those things. But in general, there is lethargy in terms of, the bicycle or public transport or, walking, the modes of sustainable transportation, as we would like to call them. So bicycle, I mean, when you ask me the question that, what do we feel about switching? I think it's a very clear kind of a question. Like, it would be very easy for me to say that, yes, people have to switch and people should switch, but it comes with a lot of baggage because this is behavior. This is human behavior. What we are asking to change is human behavior, human choices. And hence, it becomes important to provide that kind of an environment and provide that kind of a design in the city itself, which then encourages this modal shift. Right now, what is happening in our city, in Pune, and in probably many cities in India, is that people find it much more convenient to take their private vehicle, the two-wheeler or a car. Two-wheeler most convenient because it's also
Correct.
affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And to shift from that to a cycle or from that to public transport is a challenge. It's a real struggle. And for
Mm.
that to happen, there are a number of things that need to change. There has to be policy level interventions, there have to be design level interventions, and then there has to be awareness of, why we are really asking you to make a choice between a private vehicle and a cycle, or a private vehicle and public transportation. So it's a very layered thing, as I said. And like, even in for the World Bicycle Day, we did a very short experiment of, having a cyclist and a car driver leave from the same spot at the same time, and then, end at a particular point, just to see, how much time the cycle takes and the car takes. And we found that on an average, we did it on 8 to 10 roads, and we found that the car is only 1 minute slower on an average than this cycle, I'm sorry, is only a minute slower than the car on
Mm.
an average. But then the added benefits of a cycle is that it does not cause congestion because the road space it requires compared to a car or a two-wheeler is much lesser. It does
Mm.
not add to the air pollution. It is a non-polluting vehicle, and it's also good for the health of the cyclist. But when is it good for the health of the cyclist? When the air that we are breathing is cleaner, and that again is related to how many vehicles are there in the city. So it's like, everything is kind of mixed. And for people to reap the benefits of cycling, it is equally necessary for the number of vehicles in the city to go down. And that can only happen when we are providing them with good alternatives. So good pathways for cycling, cycle tracks, good footpaths, and good public transportation system. So
Mm.
yeah, that's like it's like a circle. It's like a circle.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Like
it's
when you
work, that goes into that happening. Yeah.
Mm. Well, while you were speaking, I think like the thought that struck me is that how much of a systemic intervention this is, and requires so many nudges from different ends as well. Um, so while that is about the cycle intervention, what according to you is a sort of missing in today's transportation system? Like very recently we've had this conversation going about how the Mumbai government has approved the metro project in 2014, I think, and which is still under construction. It's come a long way, but still. Um, and their main aim was to basically reduce traffic congestion and increase accessibility amongst people. And it is also apparently seen as a green alternative, which is also energy efficient in some way. And so how are these helpful in the building of a city? Even Pune has a metro project that is, I think, being sanctioned or underway. Um, So how are these helping, if at all they are?
Right. So yeah, I mean, when you started with asking what is wrong or what is it that does not work for us in terms of transportation, I think it is the fact that, when we are planning, when the city is planning, it is planning only for vehicles. So even in there's a national urban transport policy that we have, which says that the main motive of any kind of, transportation planning should be to move more people from one place to another and not more vehicles. What that means is basically that we also have a very interesting picture, which I can't show you right now, but it's actually a city in Germany. Munster Municipal Corporation has that picture in their building, which has 60 cyclists, and they are standing with their cycles. Then there are 60 cars, 60 people who are driving by cars, so 60 cars, and then there's a bus. And that picture sort of clarifies this whole thing of how much our modal choice affects what we are doing to our cities. So 60 cyclists obviously take up very little space and no
Mm,
emissions. 60
mm,
cars, on the other hand, with one person in each car, is taking up a lot of space, causing congestion, causing air pollution. And the same number of people can fit into one bus, which is even lesser space than 60 cycles. So, such a kind of vision is something that is missing in terms of how we are planning our transportation in our cities, which means that we are all from Pune. We know the situation of PMTML. We know how it is. I myself, I used to travel by bus in college, and I used to get, glances of shock that how do you even manage to, I mean, how does it work? It's like some alien thing. Because we are so used to just getting our two-wheeler and just going off wherever, that even the thought of public transport or public bus system is something that does not strike as real or strike as an alternative. So what is wrong is this approach that there are no alternatives other than the private vehicle. I think that needs to change somewhere. And when it comes to the metro, metro is counted as public transport. But what we need to understand is that metro at this stage, with substandard bus system and no provisions for people to actually reach the metro station, is something that does not make sense if you're going to say that one route of metro in the city of Pune is going to solve your transportation problems. It's not. I think we need to be practical about this. And that's the thing with metro, and a thing with a lot of projects that that the governments find attractive. They are big projects, but whether they really solve your transportation problems is something that people are not considering. And even as citizens, I think people tend to get wooed by such projects. Ki, oh, Pune will have metro, it will be great. But are you going to then keep your car or your two-wheeler in your parking and then travel by that metro every day? That's a question which needs to be addressed. And that, just by building a metro, that's not going to change.
mm,
So what we need along with the metro is basically a good transport system to actually feed the metro. How will people go to the metro station? Again, take two-wheelers and go there and park it and then go by metro. Then the whole point of metro being non-polluting or whatever else is not really true. It's just a greenwash. So these things are there which need to be considered. I think the best way to go for a city is to first strengthen its public bus transportation system because of its, just the fact that it penetrates deeper into the roads. A metro will only go on the main route. Then to have intermediate public transport like rickshaws or, there are cycle rickshaws in some cities of India or shared rickshaw, something like that, and then have good walking facilities for walking and cycling for people to actually use them for at least shorter distances. So, this
mm,
is like a mantra of sustainable transport that even if you don't have a private vehicle, you should be able to go from one place to another.
mm. That actually makes so much sense, because I was just referring to the point that you mentioned earlier. Like, each city is so different, like you mentioned about Pune itself, right? So I was actually thinking about how this has become a sort of a trend. Like, सारे metropolitan cities में अभी Delhi में आया, Bangalore में आया. So is it necessary that even Mumbai and Pune also have it now? Like, it's becoming a trend because all these cities have different histories, different ecological landscapes, different natural histories. So all of this, is it being considered actually, or is it just being, it's a trend now? So yeah, so I would like to pick this one point that you mentioned about how buses and cycles and autos, they sort of penetrate the smaller ends in a road or in a city. um, So, I would like to understand about how transport is gendered, or is it ableist in any way? Like just day before yesterday, I had some of my male friends who were gloating about how they experienced the city in the dead of the night. And I just couldn't empathize because, well, I haven't stepped outside in the dead of the night, right? So, um, yeah, I the whole setup of transport, which is sort of dimly lit railway stations and nooks and corners on a street, dead ends, number of shops that are there on a street, the availability of public transport in an area, all of these sort of sum into an experience that one has. So how does being a woman, being a queer person, being a person from a marginalized community, or being differently abled affect one's experience in transit?
It's a very, very interesting question. And though none of our cities are doing enough to address it, there's a lot of study available which clearly points out how the travel patterns of some of these categories are different. For example, women. I think women, according to the national census, 50% of the urban population in India is women, and about 84% of those women rely on walking, cycling, and public transportation for their regular transit. Another interesting thing then is to see what kind of trips women have. Women and men differ in their trips. The trips that men take are generally from their home to place of work back home, and of course the other recreational, whatever else is there. But women, on the other hand, because of their societal roles, because of accessibility, the accessibility that they have to fulfill these societal roles of being a caregiver, being a mother, being a caregiver to the older people in the family, their trips are different. Their trips are more related to the course that they have to do. Their trips are generally off peak, and the whole nature of the trips is different. I mean, if I have to go home and then I'm also working, so I take a bus from office. I get down at some a Monday or Bhaji Market. I just love Monday and I just go there every time I get a chance. But if I just go to Monday, I am going to carry this big bag of vegetables, and then with that, am I going to be able to get a bus again? I can afford a rickshaw. A lot of people cannot. And the identification or the recognition of the fact that women have different transport needs is very important if you want to make your transportation gender neutral or gender sensitive, not neutral, but gender sensitive. Same is the case with differently abled. I think for them it's way more difficult because there's almost none. I mean, I haven't seen a bus stop in Pune which is accessible to a person on a wheelchair. I mean, it's just I don't know how people do it. I mean, I'm sure at least visually, people who are visually disabled. I have seen them manage in spite of struggling a lot more. Very simple things like there are tactile tiles for the purpose of the tactile tiles is basically to direct a blind person, a visually impaired person, to let him know whether you have to go straight, whether you have to go right. The design of those tiles is different, but a lot of footpaths in Pune have just put those tiles like some random design. So it does not make any sense. There is no understanding of what those mean or what how they can be used to make the life of a visually impaired person better. So that angle is really, really far off. Right now, we are not even being able to provide services to the normal abled people. But it's important because I think transportation is something which is uh, I think it's just a part of your experience in the city. I mean, you cannot, it's when you are denying somebody their right to move from one part of the city to another, it's pretty fundamental and it's not fair at all. So I think looking at it at that light, it is very important to consider women, to consider differently able, the vulnerable, the children, and the senior citizens. And all these categories are extremely important to be considered. But right now, it's not happening.
So, how does one go about it? Like, what kind of changes must be undertaken to have these at least being considered in on some level? Like, does it need policy intervention, advocacy interventions, or awareness in general, or what are the kind of things that can be actually done.
Yeah. So, in everything I think that Parisar does and what has worked for us so far is that interventions need to be done at both levels. One is the policy level intervention, which is systemic, and which means
Mm.
that tomorrow, if Parisar is there, not there, implemented, there are systemic changes that happen. So we've always tried to make policy interventions which are more sustainable and which are more long term. So that is one thing. And there is this another level of having awareness from people, in people, because finally, uh, the city that you have is actually the city that people asked for. And if people are not asking for good things to happen in the city, they are staying silent, then it just means that they are okay with the status quo. And so, awareness at that level or engagement more than awareness, I mean, this next step of awareness is equally important. So, it's both. It's both. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was very, very profound that the city that we see is what the people have asked for. So that makes a lot of sense. So I think we're towards the end of the discussion, and there's one last question that I'd like to ask is that what can an ordinary citizen like myself do in order to say change or modify the landscape, or at least even be a part of the dialogue in some way? So what are the steps one can take?
So, in terms of being active citizen, Pune is very fortunate. Pune has a really strong NGO culture. And Pune also has very enthusiastic citizens who are ready to take up issues which otherwise many other cities don't have. That is why Pune is also one of the cities. I mean, I've said so many things about things being wrong in Pune, but I should mention that Pune is one of the very few cities which at least has bicycle tracks. They need to be improved, of course, but many other cities just don't bother. We have footpaths, many other cities don't. We have very important policies like the parking policy, the street design guidelines, which basically, look at the street holistically, not just as a throughput for vehicles, but recognizing that, vehicles, it's a coexistential thing. There are shops, there are people who are cycling, people who are walking, and there are vehicular vehicles. So Pune has that policy. Pune has the street design guidelines, and these are all
Mm,
important things. And these have happened because
mm,
somewhere has been engagement with people and engagement with the NGOs of the PMC, of the PMC officials. So if as a normal citizen, if somebody comes to us, and there are a lot, we do also receive a lot of emails from people that, this is happening in our area. What do you think we should do? Or how can you do something? But the best way, I mean, the answer that is the best to give is that there are a lot of citizen forums that are already existing in many areas of Pune. There are mohalla committees, which basically you're owning that particular area that you're living in, and then you're driving whatever issues are there with the local level, corporator or the municipal officials of different departments. So the best way to actually bring about any change in your locality, just to start with, is to basically engage with your corporator, because those people can, if you just spend some time, I think they are just available for people and their queries and their questions, because that's what their election and all of that depends on. So a lot of us
mm,
don't really go through that much, but the local level, ward corporators are a good avenue to really systematically engage with for any changes to be done. Secondly, there are, all of the NGOs that we are working with, there's a network of NGOs, there is Parisar, there is CE, there is SPTM, and we periodically have petitions, we periodically have work to be done where we need citizens' help and citizen support and engagement. And I think engaging with such NGOs is also a good way to actually get into the whole citizen activism or just citizen engagement part of it. So yeah, just being aware and just being ready to
mm.
take a little bit action ahead of just reading from the newspapers is a good way to go about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, okay, so I think we're towards the end, and maybe if anybody from the audience wants to join and take forward the conversation or ask anything or has questions, and if you want to put questions in the little box below, we can take those right now. if you want to join the live, you will have to ask, you will have to request to be a part of the live, and I can give access. Anybody, Sharmila, Gaurav, Anish is here. Achal, if you have anything. Okay. Meanwhile, if you have any personal anecdotes or anything to share from your experiences being a citizen in Pune who's been traveling in and around the city, it would be nice to hear from you.
Is this for me?
Yeah.
As I said, the bus travel is something I've stopped choosing the bus because of the two things that I didn't mention actually. But when we did the gender and transport study, and there have been studies elsewhere also, that women basically have two kinds of poverties when it comes to transportation. One is accessibility, and the second
Mm,
is time. And I actually had time poverty once, I had my daughter and I had to rush home. And that's when I stopped using the bus because it was just too much time to spend and I had to reach home early. But that's my
mm,
own personal experience. But that's also one of the major issues apart from safety that women face when it comes to transportation, that women spend an inordinate amount of time traveling for their needs because they do not have access to a good public transportation, and generally private transportation women have lesser access to than males. So
mm,
these two terms are very interesting: accessibility poverty and time poverty. So
mm.
yeah, that's something that I've also experienced, but it's pretty
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Mm, I feel like, I mean, all women, it becomes a part of the system, and it sort of dissipates so seamlessly that we start not noticing these things eventually. Like
Hmm.
it just becomes a part of daily life. So it's so much to unlearn, so much to, if you want to sort of read between the lines of what is actually happening, and why is the system the way it is. And it's not something that was just given to us, it's being made by somebody, it's come together somehow. I think to understand that requires a lot of uh,
Uh,
dialogue, a lot of conversation.
yeah, it's a sociological and psychological thing too. Yeah.
It is, yeah, you're right. Okay, I think um, Jatso has asked a question about what do you think about Himalayan towns, because cycling cannot be an option.
So yeah, I do agree that that's a difficult choice to make in places where there is slope, which is much more than a normal slope. Um, uh, if not cycling, I think at least public transportation is something that cities must have, because even for the kind of roads that there might be in Himalayan cities, smaller roads, there are mini buses. There are a number of things that there are a number of alternatives that can be given depending upon the nature of your city, the terrain, the climatic conditions. But there has to be enough thought put into this whole planning, and the basic intent that I want more people to travel conveniently, affordable. It has to be affordable, and it has to be safe, is something that is at the center of it. So if not cycles, I agree that it might be difficult to cycle in Himalayan cities, but there are alternatives to provide good transportation even in such cities.
Mm. Okay, I think Jatso wants to be a part of the live, so I will accept, and maybe we can see if he has to say something.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, both of you. Yeah, I mean, thanks for what answering my kind of questions. Am I audible?
Yes, a
Absolutely.
Am I audible?
little louder,
Louder.
please.
It's the sound of the river which is disturbing actually. Yeah. So I live very near to the river. So yeah, I mean that's what our my town in Gangtok in Sikkim is going through from past 1 week. the citizens of the the citizens of the Gangtok town is discussing on this, because we are going through one of the most worst traffic time in our history of Gangtok town. So it's choked, traffic is all choked, and we are discussing on odd and even numbers also, how to do this. And since the road, because our terrain is very slow, it's a very vertical, right? And already Gangtok is a town which is unplanned, and which is a big challenge for people. So we are also thinking, if we can have a ropeway as a one of the cable car, can be one of options. But then that too come with a lot of a lot of space will be kind of like occupied in the air. Also, I guess overall, whether it's Pune or Mumbai or Gangtok or any Shimla, I think as she rightly mentioned that we have to adopt as soon as possible the culture of carpooling, just to have to be responsible. And why not to have a carpooling sense, I mean, that has to come in all of us, be it office goers, your one company, colleagues, staffs going. So carpool, that culture, behavioral changes is important, I guess, because a lot of things have gone beyond our hand, and which looks impossible to make things and undo all these things, a lot of mistakes. But I guess that's a behavioral changes that I want to mention. And but I don't have questions. I heard what she has done, and it makes a lot of sense. We Sikkim is also growing with a lot of now mountain bike culture is coming up, but these are just hobbies and different passion, and there's different sets of people, younger people. Of course, it will create bring a healthier culture to the youths. But this is of course will not be a a way or transport sustainable transportations method for us. But yeah, I think behavioral changes is the need of hour. And thanks, yeah, Vikalp Sang, for having this, sometime something very important which we miss, in our life. With all these big issues, these are very important issues which is so much connected to all of us in daily life. It was great to listen to all of you today. So thank you very much, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Raj. So,
Thank you.
would you like to introduce? Oh, I think you left. Okay. I was saying, would you like to introduce yourself? Because
Uh,
we,
well,
yeah.
I'm just a boy from mountain. I live in Sikkim, in a region called Zongu, and I've been working on rivers, campaigning for free-flowing rivers in the state for the past 18 years, and trying to save some of the beautiful and gushing independent free-flowing river in the states, which are again being planned for hydroelectric power projects for the country needs, because India needs a lot of energy, electricity. So, like cities like yours and all, who's been consuming so much of electricity, uh, but the problem with the country is the people who lives in the city, they don't have any idea of at what cost those electricities are coming, so this gap of knowledge also, this gap of awareness, at what cost all these comforts are coming, is also one big problem for us, and for to the society in large. So I think we need to find out, what we discussed today in this small group needs to be discussed, and somehow find a way to tell this to the mass. This is very important to educate the younger people, especially the schools and colleges. We need to talk about all this. No, the struggle that we are going through is something which is actually consumed by somewhere else, and then we here are, giving our life to save all these beautiful rivers and beautiful mountains and forests for you know for someone else. So yeah, I think we need to amplify this kind of discussions, this kind of topic, maybe find a little bigger audience, and I think we need to find out. I think there will be a people who will listen to us, and I think as long as we are making sense with what we are talking, I think there are people who will understand all this. So yeah, it will be nice to have a more, bigger gathering and bigger, thing to share our ideas. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing your perspective. Yeah. Okay. I think we can conclude the live since I don't see any more questions. Yeah. I think we can conclude the live for now. Thank you so much, Shweta. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your presence and time. And thank you for the work that you and Parisar have been undertaking. And like Yatsu also mentioned, we need to have these conversations more and more. And I'm very glad to have had this conversation with you.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
Same here.
any
Yeah.
any closing statements or anything if you want to say?
I just this is not a closing, but something that Gyatso said, that I know, I've been to the Northeast. I've not been to Gangtok, but I've been to the Northeast, and I've seen what it is and how beautiful it is. And when cities like that also start changing, I think, and changing in ways which are sometimes and most often irreversible, I think it's time. Those are alarm bells, and we should really, really just uh, be there as citizens to get together and to really notice what changes are happening. A lot of these changes are so subtle; they are so manipulative that you don't even know what's happening until it's already happened. So, we are at a situation, at a place in the lapse of time where the changes that we are making now are most probably going to be irreversible, and they're going to affect us really, really. Affect us in the environment and the earth. I mean, the only one earth that we had, the slogan that we had for the World Environment Day, I think it applies for everything. It applies for transport, it applies for people who are working for rivers, it applies for people who are working for anything in this world which is related to the environment. And I think that's the best that we can conclude with, that we really have only one earth, and we need to think about how much we are consuming and how much we really need, and what changes we are making are irreversible. I think we really need to look at those very, very seriously right now. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the insightful and enriching talk. And hope you have a great week ahead.
Yes, same to you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.